We have already seen the anatomy of the back. Now we'll go to the easier anatomy, that is the anatomy of the lower limb. I think lower limb will be a child's play for every one of you. Okay, so function of the lower limb is support and locomotion. Slides for first MBBS students. Muscles of the front of the thigh. Now, as we know that the thigh is divided into different compartments, so the lower limb is all divided into different compartments. In the thigh, we have the anterior compartment, that is the extensor compartment, the medial compartment, and that is the adductor compartment, and the posterior compartment, that is the flexor compartment. Now we are just going to see the muscle anatomy, so I'll show you the muscles. The muscles in the front of the thigh are the sartorius and the quadriceps femoris. Now sartorius, as you can see, it is a muscle which runs obliquely from the anterior superior iliac spine to the medial aspect of the medial condyle of the tibia. Now this is the muscle which covers the whole of the thigh and is running diagonally. The next muscle is the rectus femoris, which forms the part of the quadriceps femoris. Now quadriceps femoris, the name suggests that there are 4 muscles in this group, that is the rectus femoris, the vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, and the vastus intermedius. So if you have to go layer wise, the first muscle which you will encounter is the sartorius, which runs obliquely. Lateral to the sartorius, you will see a muscle in the superficial layer, that is the rectus femoris. If you reflect the rectus femoris, deeper will be the vastus intermedius. Medial to the vastus intermedius is the vastus medialis, and laterally is the vastus lateralis. So here is the sartorius. Point of origin is the anterior superior iliac spine. Insertion is proximal tibia or the medial condyle of the tibia on the medial surface.
See, one of the problems of sartorius is it is a very fine thin strip of muscle which goes from the lateral aspect right into the pessansarine tendon along with the gracilis and the semimembranosus, semitendinosus. And as a result, this is responsible for many pains in the knee, especially the medial aspect of the knee. The patients who have pain, it all comes from sartorius. So, and it's a very difficult muscle, because of all the muscles in the leg, when you do sonoanatomy, if you look at it, you will see that it looks fibrosed. It's very unusual for me to see a black sartorius. So it looks like, somehow by nature itself, it is under stress and strain. By 40 years, you will see that it is all nice and white. Whereas right next to it, the gracilis will look black, and the other muscle which comes next to it is the vastus medius, which looks nice and black. Whereas sartorius will be white. And putting a needle through sartorius is always painful. Even if I were to take an athlete and put it, it will be painful. Yeah. And of the vasti, the vastus intermedius seems to be the trouble magnet in this group. Vastus intermedius, can you once again elaborate? After I finish, you please elaborate its origin and insertion. Insertion of course goes into the patella, but the origin you please, this one. Because this muscle seems to be somehow or the other involved in all the burning lateral thigh, which many patients of disc issues, facet, especially facetogenic pain, what they describe as the outer thigh pain in facetogenic pain is all because of vastus medius, intermedius muscle.
So we've seen the sartorius. The next muscle is the first in the group of the quadriceps femoris, that is the rectus femoris. Now this muscle takes origin from the hip bone. So both its heads are taking origin from the hip bone, unlike the other 3 muscles of the quadriceps femoris, which take origin from the femur itself. So this is the muscle which acts on the hip joint also and the knee joint also. Yeah, flexor of the hip joint and extensor of the knee joint. It takes origin from the anterior inferior iliac spine, that's the straight head of the rectus femoris, and the reflected head will take origin from a groove just above the acetabulum on the lateral aspect. So that is a reflected head. Both the heads will come down and they will get inserted on the superior border of the patella, along with the other three muscles of the quadriceps femoris, and they will form the ligamentum patellae. So this is the rectus femoris, which is the most superficial muscle once you reflect the sartorius. The next are the three muscles, that is the three vastae, vastus medialis, vastus intermedius, and the vastus lateralis. Vastus medialis takes origin from the anterior intertrochanteric line on the medial aspect, and the origin extends to the posterior aspect of the femur, and it gets inserted into the quadriceps tendon on the medial aspect of the upper border of the patella and also the medial border of the patella. Then the vastus intermedius, it takes origin from the intertrochanteric line and the anterior surface of the femur, and it will get inserted just behind or just deep to the rectus femoris on the superior border of the patella. Vastus lateralis takes origin from the lateral aspect of the intertrochanteric line, which continues posterior on the posterior surface of the femur, and it gets inserted on the lateral border of the lateral border of the patella, and then all these together form the quadriceps tendon, which gets inserted into the tibial tuberosity.
See, in this diagram, the vastus intermedius looks like a small strip of muscle which is not any bigger than the vastus medius or lateralis. But when you look on it under the ultrasound, when I looked at the anatomy pictures like this was the image I was carrying in my head. But when you look at the lateral aspect of the thigh, if you put the ultrasound probe, you will see a second layer. So I remember asking Rakhi also, is there a superficial part and is there a deeper part of the vastus lateralis? She said, no madam, there is only vastus lateralis one head. And so I said, what is this muscle? In anatomy also it's not very easy to see, but in sonoanatomy you see very clearly a distinct muscle. This actually wraps all round the femur.
Yeah.
So this muscle wraps all round the femur. It is on top of that, superficial to it, all the other three muscles come. So this is obviously, from the functional point of view, a very important muscle for the knee and hip issues, and that somehow or the other this seems to get the referral of pain from the facets as well as the SI joint pains. You can do an SI joint injection or a facet RF. The back pain to some extent will go down, and the outer thigh pain will still remain. They will still be sore. When you touch them, on pressure there will be tenderness, and they will continue to have burning of pain in the outer thigh. Anterior outer thigh is the area of this muscle. So vastus intermedius is a very important muscle when it comes to facet pains and even discogenic pains. As I have shown you, there is very little difference between the discogenic and the facetogenic genesis of pain, the way it traps the nerve root.
Yeah, as madam has already said, vastus intermedius does indeed form a big part in the quadriceps femoris, and the vastus lateralis also, since it extends, the origin extends right to the posterior aspect of the femur, this also forms a big bulk of the muscle. The vastus lateralis means when you do the dissection from the posterior aspect, you can see the vastus lateralis actually from the posterior aspect, right next to the biceps. Okay. This is a small group of muscle, that is the articularis genu, the function of the articularis genu is to hold the suprapatellar bursa in position. Tensor fascia lata. Now this muscle takes origin from the anterior part of the iliac crest, and it gets inserted into the iliotibial tract. Now here in this diagram you can see the pointer is on the tensor fascia lata, which is getting inserted on the iliotibial tract from the anterior aspect, and from the posterior aspect the gluteus maximus comes and gets inserted into the iliotibial tract. So it forms like a here also it can form like a guy rope, the tensor fascia lata holding from the anterior aspect and the gluteus maximus holding from the posterior aspect.
See, tensor fascia lata is a small bundle of muscle, really speaking, but is one of the major triggers in the lower limb. In the lower limb, the acknowledged triggers are the gluteal trigger and the tensor trigger. It is the tensor trigger which gives a very awkward kind of a pain in the just below the this one, anterior superior iliac spine. Many patients have this pain, and when you do needling of the tensor fascia lata under ultrasound, you can see several LTRs, and once the needling is done like this, the pain becomes very much less. So tensor fascia lata is again a very important muscle for many pains.
Okay. Now all these muscles in the front of the thigh are supplied by the femoral nerve. You can see that the femoral nerve comes from below the inguinal ligament, enters the femoral triangle, and it supplies all these muscles in the anterior compartment over here. Okay. Next we come is to the muscles of the medial aspect of the thigh. Now these muscles are also called as the adductors. These are the intrinsic muscles, that is the adductor longus, adductor brevis, adductor magnus, gracilis and the pectineus, and the extrinsic, that is the obturator externus. So we see the individual muscles. Now here we can see all the muscles together, that is the adductor longus, brevis in one image along with the pectineus and the gracilis, and on the right image we see the obturator externus and the adductor magnus. Now adductor longus, it takes origin from the pubis at the junction of the upper and the medial border of the pubis, and then it comes down on the posterior aspect, gets inserted just lateral to the insertion of the vastus origin of the vastus medialis muscle. It gets inserted over there. Now pectineus is inserted at a higher level. It takes origin from the pectineal line and the pectineal surface on the pubis, and it gets inserted on the posterior aspect again at a level higher than the adductor longus. Adductor brevis, it is placed, the origin is from the ischiopubic ramus and the ramus of the pubis, and on the ramus of the pubis it will take origin just behind the adductor longus, and it will be placed superior to the origin of the gracilis. So here it will come and get inserted on the posterior aspect of the femur on a plane which is deeper to the adductor longus from the anterior aspect. So if you go from the anterior aspect, you will encounter the adductor longus first insertion and then the adductor brevis. Similarly, we can see the gracilis muscle over here. Now it takes origin from the ischiopubic ramus and gets inserted along with the sartorius and the semitendinosus on the medial aspect of the medial condyle of the tibia. The second image we see the obturator externus from the outer aspect of the obturator foramen, and it will get inserted into the notch on the posterior aspect of the greater trochanter of the femur. Now the adductor magnus, it's a very wide muscle. It takes origin from the ischiopubic ramus as well as the ischial tuberosity. So it has two heads of origin. One is the pubic part and one is the ischial part. Both heads have different functions. but the insertion is also very wide. As we can see, it is still in a deeper plane to the adductor brevis if we go from the anterior aspect, and it extends, the insertion extends right up to the adductor tubercle.
See, these adductor pains are quite common and inexplicable, and happens usually after something like a sports injury, or if they have a fall or something like that, and there will be no investigation which will show anything in these people. So they keep getting investigated, they find nothing, and these people are in a situation where they cannot stand, cannot walk. And many of them, since it is sports kind of injury, they are all youngsters. So they are very frustrated by this situation. I had a young girl who was about maybe 35 or so. She was an independent young woman working in Hong Kong by herself, earning a lot of money, and of course going trekking here, there, everywhere. Then she got this pain, and she had had exactly about 6 MRIs, 2 done in Hong Kong, 2 done in Mumbai, and in none of them you can find anything. Ultrasound does not show anything. Diagnostic ultrasound did not show anything. And here is this girl who is, cannot stand, cannot walk. And then somebody had the gall to suggest to her that it might be functional, and maybe because she is not married or some such thing. And she literally flew off the handle. And then that was when she came to me. And these patients, these adductor pains, unless you do PRF of the obturator nerves, both the superficial and the deep branches, which you can see very well. In fact, this is one of the PRFs which is very easy to do, really. And so after that, you have to do good needling for them. And again, since these are youngsters who are who are very athletic and want to become active, and they are very intolerant of pain. How can I get pain when I'm 30 or 35 or whatever it is? And they are achievers as well. So for this girl, I remember after all this, for the 20% remaining pain, I had to give her Botox into these muscles, and then she was happy. The Botox I give is a very small dose Botox, and we won't go into those details because it is ultrasound guided dry needling guides us as to how much Botox is to be given. So it is something like a super specialization of the whole situation, but it is extremely useful. And in this adductor pains, the PRF and needling is very, very useful, and they go to all the way to normalcy. So whenever somebody comes with these adductor pains, you have to be aware that all these muscles, the pectineus, the obturator externus, the longus, brevis, and the magnus. Magnus is anyway involved in every single back pain. The longus and brevis may not be involved so much in the back pains, but magnus is forever involved in back pains. You have to understand, these adductor muscles are the ones which maintain the stance and balance when a person is standing. They and the psoas, they work together. And these, one of the diagrams which I showed in my presentation was that there is like an X connection. The adductor of the left side, adductors of the left side will have a connection with the quadratus lumborum and thoracolumbar fascia of the right side, and vice versa. So in these back pains, unless the adductor muscles are needled, things don't settle well in them. So adductors are very important muscles, and especially they become very important for the patients to stand, the ability to stand for longer periods, and to walk, and to do all activities. They are the stabilizers, and they are very, very powerful muscles. And it is to counter these very powerful muscles that your vastus lateralis is, in fact, all these muscles, the only antagonist will be the vastus lateralis.
Yeah.
So And there is always a connection with these things. You have to look at all these issues when you are dealing with back pain.
So the nerve supply of all these muscles on the medial aspect is the obturator nerve, which is divisible into the anterior and the posterior branch, as madam has already said. Adductor brevis. It may be a hybrid muscle. It can be supplied by the anterior or the posterior division, and adductor longus is supplied by the anterior division, and the magnus is supplied by the posterior division.
What Raki said was that the anterior division supplies the brevis and the longus, and the posterior division supplies the magnus. And sometimes when you do the stimulation for PRF of the anterior division, everything is jumping around the place, whereas the posterior division sometimes is a little more difficult to locate, because only the magnus will jump. But of course magnus is a powerful muscle, it will jump hard. But this is what you see. Somehow the anterior division seems to be more, responsive.
Now we come to the next part, that is the muscles of the gluteal region. Now this again is a very crowded area. The muscles which we see are the gluteus maximus, which is the most superficial, then the medius and the minimus. Here you can see all the three muscles. On the left hand side we can see a cut part of the gluteus maximus and the cut part of the gluteus medius. Now the gluteus maximus again has a very wide origin from the iliac crest, the outer lip of the posterior aspect of the iliac crest, then on the sacrum and the sacrotuberous ligament, and on the gluteal surface of the gluteal surface of the ilium, and it will get inserted on the iliotibial tract and the gluteal tuberosity on the hip bone, on the femur. Then we have the gluteus medius, which takes origin on the gluteal surface between the anterior and the posterior gluteal lines. It gets inserted on the lateral aspect of the greater trochanter of the femur. Then the gluteus minimus, which takes origin on the gluteal surface between the inferior and the anterior gluteal lines, and it will get inserted on the anterior aspect of the greater trochanter of the femur. So these are the three glutei muscles. The next muscle is the gluteus maximus. Takes origin from the outer aspect of the posterior part of the iliac crest. Origin again continues on the lateral aspect of the lower part of the sacrum and on the sacrotuberous ligament. Also it takes origin on the gluteal surface behind the posterior gluteal line, so behind the attachment of the gluteus medius. That is the gluteus maximus. Origin, insertion is on the iliotibial tract, majority part, that is the 3/4 part on the iliotibial tract, and some part on the gluteal tuberosity on the femur. So these are the points of origin and insertion of the gluteus maximus.
See, gluteus maximus is a very big muscle, and most of its insertion is into the iliotibial tract, because this is the major extensor of the hip. And in fact, many pains in the lateral thigh and the back of the thigh come from this gluteus maximus. And gluteus medius is where the gluteus medius ends, the vastus lateralis takes over for the abduction. So it is always involved in issues of abduction. And so gluteus minimus, though it is called the minimus and it's a small muscle, it's very well seen on sonoanatomy, and it is almost always tender when you do needling. So many patients will tell you that pain on the outer side of the hip will always be because of this medius and minimus, and the back of the buttock and the lateral aspect, most of the time the pains are because of the gluteus maximus. It's a huge muscle and it is free floating. It's really inserting into a tendinous structure.
Yeah. Deeper to the gluteus maximus, we can see the piriformis. the gemellus superior, gemellus inferior, obturator internus, and the quadratus femoris. So these are all the small muscles which are placed below the cover of the gluteus maximus. So piriformis takes origin from the inner aspect of the sacrum. It comes out through the greater sciatic notch and it will get inserted on the tip of the greater trochanter. Below that we will see the gemellus superior, gemellus inferior, and the obturator internus. They come out from the lesser sciatic notch. The superior and the inferior are attached to the borders of the lesser sciatic notch, while the obturator internus comes from the inner aspect of the obturator foramen. So all these will come and the obturator internus will get inserted on the superior border of the obturator notch on the greater trochanter.
This is what I was talking about. The sciatic nerve lies between the piriformis above and this trio of gemelli, the superior, inferior with the obturator internus in between them. When you see it in dissection, it is quite a confusing thing to understand because they are starting from the inner aspect of the obturator foramen, and from there they are forming a sling. They are actually coming out and then coming out through the lesser sciatic foramen to insert into the where is that? Where are they inserted?
On the greater trochanter.
On the greater
upper border of the greater trochanter.
I think greater trochanter is a very crowded place. All kinds of things are happening there. But all these muscles, they are small, but they are very important. And I remember one very senior radiologist who, after he was a failed back surgery syndrome. In the sense, after surgery, he developed osteomyelitis, unfortunately, of the pedicle, and he was bedridden for about 3-4 months. And after that, when he just could not get up out of bed because he had lot of pain in the buttock, and which became a radicular pain. So he was admitted in one of the major hospitals where he was given a piriformis injection. Fluoroscopy guided, somebody gave a CT guided piriformis injection. You can't get more accurate than that. And then somebody did a fluoroscopy guided piriformis. It was a piriformis syndrome. But they are injecting piriformis again and again and nothing is happening. And then somebody since he was a major ultrasonologist also, his assistant and a pain specialist together injected the piriformis under ultrasound. Under vision, they saw it spreading in the ultrasound, this thing, piriformis, but he had no relief. But then he came to me. Then at that time, I didn't want to give him steroids with the osteomyelitis picture going on. I didn't want to give him any more steroids. He has already had 3 injections. So I said, sir, let me do your needling for you. Then I found that when I went near the gemelli, everything was jumping around the place. So it was actually not just piriformis, but the combination of gemelli and piriformis. In fact, I have published a paper on this. Piriformis syndrome, is it only piriformis? Because you have to understand, piriformis it's not a question of piriformis acting like a knife on the sciatic, but it is a part of a scissor where piriformis forms one blade and the gemelli form the other blade. And in between is this obturator internus muscle, which is quite a powerful muscle and a big muscle actually. And it is taking a very circuitous route from somewhere to somewhere. As a result, all these can cause problems for piriformis syndrome.
And the obturator externus. So we can see that this muscle, actually it is very deep for dissection. You have to reflect the gluteus maximus, then you have to reflect the obturator internus and the 2 gemelli, and then you reach the obturator externus. So most of the times we do not see the obturator externus from either side, from the anterior aspect also and the posterior aspect also. We do not tend to do the dissection that deep. Externus. It is coming from the anterior aspect. Yeah, from the external border of the obturator foramen. Okay. Now, as madam said, this is a very crowded place, and you can see that the sciatic nerve is emerging from below the piriformis, and we have cut the sciatic nerve, or this image shows a cut sciatic nerve with the muscles deeper to it, that is the superior and the inferior gemellus and the obturator internus. And you can see the superior gluteal nerve and the inferior gluteal nerve, which supply the gluteus maximus supplied by the inferior gluteal nerve, and the gluteus medius and minimus supplied by the superior gluteal nerve. And these nerves which come down, they supply the obturator, the superior gemellus and the obturator internus, that is nerve to the obturator internus, and the nerve to quadratus femoris also supplies the inferior gemellus. So this is the nerve supply of the muscles in the gluteal region. Next is we come to the muscles of the back of the thigh. Here we see the hamstrings. Hamstrings is made up of 4 muscles, that is the semitendinosus and the semimembranosus, which are on the medial aspect of the thigh, and the long head of the bicep femoris and the ischial head of the adductor magnus, which is on the lateral aspect of the thigh. The short head of the bicep femoris is also part of the muscles of the back, but it does not belong to the hamstring group of muscles because it does not take origin from the ischial tuberosity. So these are the muscles on the posterior aspect. You will appreciate them better in the video demonstration, because here you are only seeing the theoretical, the image part of the video, the muscles. So these are the muscles. You can see in the first image the semitendinosus taking origin from the ischial tuberosity and getting inserted on the medial aspect of the medial condyle of the tibia, along with the sartorius and the gracilis. So all these 3 muscles together form a group of muscles which are inserted on the medial aspect of the medial condyle of the tibia as a part of the pes anserinus. Then is the semimembranosus, again origin from the ischial tuberosity and getting inserted on the posterior aspect of the medial condyle of the tibia. And lastly, the long head of the bicep femoris, which takes origin along with the semitendinosus. Now this muscle goes laterally and gets inserted on the head of the fibula. So these are the 3 muscles which take origin from the ischial tuberosity. The next muscle is the adductor magnus.
See, in radicular pains, it is the hamstrings all the way. Most of the pains come from the biceps femoris, both the long head and the short head. Both are equally nasty. The long head pains come on the outer lateral and back of thigh pain is from the long head, and the short head becomes very irritable and it gives a burning kind of a pain on needling, the short head of biceps, and invariably it is very irritable. And this is the situation for the acute phase. But later it is the semimembranosus and the tendinosus which seem to sustain the pains. And I have had many patients who have done very well after a block and then a needling. After the treatment was over, they don't come at all for years, and then suddenly they'll come after 2-3 years and say, look, I don't have back pain, but something is not right. I'm not comfortable. So in these patients, when I do the needling, their back is not so badly involved. It doesn't have too many LTRs and all that. But it is the semimembranosus and tendinosus which are very irritable, more than irritable, very hard, very tight muscles. So this kind of a, pattern, one type of a pain in the acute phase, one type of a pain in the chronic phase, kind of a situation happens because of the hamstrings. Hamstrings play a very huge role in the stance. See, back pain is not about back. The back rests on the 2 pillars of the limbs. So the muscles which stabilize these limbs are the ones which determine how the back behaves. So you cannot treat back without treating the legs and the stance. And in the stance, it is very important to look at the hamstrings And of course the adductors, which are the major stabilizers. I think one of the major problems which has come is because of the erect posture of the human beings. Most of these muscles were designed for four-legged animals, where they were very comfortable. And once we stood up, I think human beings developed back pain, one, because now the back became dependent on the adequate length of the hamstrings. If the hamstrings are shorter, the angulation at the lumbar curve is going to become more, because it has to compensate. The back has to arch backwards because these muscles are shorter. So these are the problems of posture, mainly erect posture. And the other muscles which suffer because of this erect posture are the quadratus lumborum, and of course in the neck, levator scapulae and trapezius. These muscles were just not designed for the erect posture. They were designed actually for the four-legged animal. That is the reason why you have so many episodes of trapezitis. And quadratus lumborum is another thing, because it has to lift the trunk up, the upper part of the trunk, and balance it on the pelvis.
So this is the adductor magnus, which the ischial part forms the part of the hamstrings. You can see in this the second image, the purple colored part of the muscle is part of the hamstring, while the other is the part of the adductor compartment. Okay, so the nerve supply of the muscles of the posterior compartment is from the sciatic nerve. All the muscles are supplied by the sciatic nerve. The tibial, hamstring part is supplied by the tibial component, while the biceps femoris short head is supplied by the peroneal component. Now we come to the muscles of the front of the leg. There are four muscles in the front of the leg, that is the tibialis anterior, extensor hallucis longus, extensor digitorum longus, and the peroneus tertius. So these are the muscles which you can see. Tibialis anterior, you can see that it takes origin from the lateral aspect of the lateral surface of the tibia, gets inserted on the medial aspect of the medial cuneiform. Then next is the extensor digitorum muscle, taking origin from the fibula as well as some part of the tibia, gets inserted on the dorsal surfaces of the digits of the lateral four toes. Then extensor hallucis longus, taking origin from the fibula, coming down, getting inserted on the dorsal aspect of the great toe, last digit. And then the peroneus tertius, which takes origin from the fibula and gets inserted on the base of the last metatarsal on the dorsal aspect.
Is it medially located?
Yes.
Extensor.
Yes.
Does it come from the top?
No, hallucis come from down.
Down. Only
Yeah.
down.
Means upper part gives origin to the extensor digitorum, and lower part gives origin to the
Lower medial fibers are the
extensor hallucis. So the tendons are also placed like that. From medial to lateral, if you go across the ankle, the tendons will be the tibialis anterior, then the extensor hallucis, then the extensor digitorum, and then the peroneus tertius. So these will be the tendons going from medial to the lateral aspect on the anterior aspect.
See, it is what is shown as dermatomal distribution of L4-5 in the front of the leg is all pains which come from these muscles. Unless these muscles are needled, those pains will not go easily. Especially the lower 1/3 of the leg above the ankle, the medial part where Raki says is the extensor hallucis.
So these are the anterior leg muscles, and nerve supply to these muscles is by the deep peroneal nerve. Now deep peroneal is a branch of the common peroneal nerve. which is given just after the common peroneal takes a turn around the neck of the fibula and divides into deep and the superficial peroneal nerves. So the deep peroneal nerve supplies all the muscles in the anterior compartment, while the superficial will supply the muscles of the lateral compartment. Now the only two muscles in the lateral compartment are the peroneus longus and the peroneus brevis. Now if we see the lateral surface of the fibula, the attachment given in the books is quite complicated, but to remember, you just have to remember the longus takes origin from the upper part and the brevis takes origin from the lower part. Both these tendons will go behind the lateral malleolus. Peroneus longus will continue to go from the inferior aspect to the medial to the first metatarsal and get inserted on the plantar aspect of the first metatarsal, while peroneus brevis will get inserted on the lateral aspect of the last metatarsal bone. So in this image also you can see the insertion of the peroneus longus going right from the plantar aspect to the medial aspect of the foot, while the peroneus brevis gets inserted on the lateral aspect only. As I've already told you, the nerve supply in the lateral compartment is by the superficial peroneal nerve. Next we come is to the the back of the leg. Here the superficial muscles are the gastrocnemius, soleus and the plantaris. So the gastrocnemius takes origin from both the condyles of the femur, the medial head from the medial condyle and the lateral head from the lateral condyle. Both the heads unite together to form the tendoacheus along with the soleus. The soleus takes origin from the fibula as well as from the tibia, and they form the tendoacheus and get inserted on the posterior aspect of the calcaneum. Deeper to this will be the plantaris. Deeper to the gastrocnemius will be the plantaris. In the right image you can see the plantaris muscle also. We can see that muscle in the dissection video also. So plantaris, as you can see, it has a small belly and a long tendon. Any question?
What I wanted to say was, peroneus is another notorious muscle for pain, especially the peroneus brevis. The longus seems to give more pains around the pulley, where it goes behind the lateral malleolus and in the outer foot. Probably many times what is considered as the L5 pain on the lateral aspect of the foot is mediated by these peronei muscles. Particularly the peroneus brevis will give a lot of pain on the lateral aspect of the leg, again in the lower half. And soleus and gastrocnemius of course are very, very important for the pains, because invariably they are involved in radicular pains. But what you have to understand is these are plantar flexors, the soleus and the gastrocnemius. And in addition there is the tibialis anterior and posterior, which are very important for the movements of the ankle. So these are all the muscles which execute the ankle movements and determine how the patient stands. All of you can do this experiment. You can simply stand, do a little dorsiflexion and stand, and do a little plantar flexion and stand, and you see what happens to your back. So when these muscles are shortened, either the dorsiflexors or the plantar flexors, then there is a lot of change in the way back is disposed in space. And so unless these are addressed, back pains will not really settle down very well. And these are postural pains, and this posture is something which will be there with the patient for years and years. So correcting these makes a very big difference to them. And of course after doing the needling, proper physiotherapy with good stretching and all that is very important. And tibialis posterior and anterior are extremely important in CRPS of leg. They are the ones which freeze the ankle in place. Ankle movements are less by the gastrocnemius and soleus as the tibialis posterior and anterior.
Okay, so Now we come to the back of the leg where we've already seen the gastrocnemius, soleus and the plantaris. The deep muscles are the popliteus. You can see the origin tendon of the popliteus coming from the lateral epicondyle, and the belly of the popliteus which is inserted on the posterior surface of the tibia just above the origin of the soleus. Then the flexor digitorum longus, flexor hallucis longus and the tibialis posterior. So here we see the tibialis posterior taking origin from the posterior surfaces of both the tibia and the fibula. Then the flexor digitorum longus, which takes origin from the tibia, and the flexor hallucis longus, which takes origin from the fibula. Now ideally we would think that the digitorum longus would take origin from the fibula and go to the digits on the lateral aspect, and the hallucis will take origin from the tibia and go to the great toe on the medial aspect. But it is reverse over here. The tendons cross over when they cross the ankle, and the hallucis tendon comes medially from the fibula, and the digitorum tendon comes laterally from the tibia. So this is how the tendons are placed over here. The tibialis posterior goes right to the navicular bone and gets inserted over there. The flexor hallucis longus will go to the great toe on the plantar aspect, and the flexor digitorum longus will go to the other toes on the plantar aspect. Nerve supply of the posterior compartment is by the tibial nerve. Now we come to the last part, that is the muscles of the sole of the foot. Now this is a complicated.
It comes at the end.
The anatomy of the sole of the foot, since the dissection is also a bit difficult because of the fibrofatty tissue present over there, it invariably and the compartments are also too compact. So invariably you tend to forget about the layers of the sole of the foot. So there are 4 layers in the sole. The first layer, you can see there are 3 muscles in the first layer. The center muscle is the flexor digitorum brevis. On the medial aspect there is the abductor hallucis, and on the lateral aspect is the abductor digiti minimi. Now all these muscles take origin from the calcaneum, from the heel, and they go anteriorly and get inserted on the lateral and the medial aspects of the great toe and the last toe, that is the little toe, and help in the abduction of the great toe and the little toe. The next layer is the layer of the tendons of the flexor digitorum longus, where the attachment of the lumbricals can be seen, and attached to it is the quadrate plantae muscle. This you will be able to appreciate during the dissection video. Here the pointer is not working, that is why I am not able to show you. And the third layer, it shows the adductors hallucis, the flexor hallucis brevis, and the flexor digiti minimi brevis. Deeper to that, you will see the plantar interossei, and the last layer will be the dorsal interossei, which are appreciated more from the dorsal aspect. So these are the muscles of the sole. All these are supplied by the medial and the lateral plantar nerves, which are the branches of the tibial nerve. So this is all about the anatomy of the sole. Ma'am wants to speak something about the muscles of the sole.
Yeah. See, muscles of the sole. I know all of you are tired and you would like to have tea, but these are very important in many of the problems of the back pain, and more than that, these are the ones which are responsible for the plantar fasciitis pains, all these muscles. And in CRPS, these are vital. You have to needle these muscles. But once done, and you have many patients who come with numbness, with back pain, and then chappal slipping away. Chappal slipping away is because the adductors are not adducting well. Adductor hallucis is not working well. That is the third layer, right?
Yeah.
Third layer. So unless you go and release that wonderful adductor, or release the abductor, which probably is holding it in place, these things will not settle. And when you do the needling, the tinglings come down, the numbness comes down, hyperesthesia, paresthesias come down. So all these things which are considered as neuropathic symptoms are all because of these muscles of the foot.
So thank you so much. I know this is a monotonous anatomy class. Only practicals are more interesting in anatomy. Thank you.
Lakshmi, you said that it is a tibialis anterior and tibialis posterior which freezes the ankle.
Yeah.
But I thought the calf muscle which has the tendoachilles is the one that would have acted more on the ankle.
No, they do act on the ankle. I think they are probably something like secondary. The tibialis anterior and posterior are the ones which are very important. Unless you release these, the ankle doesn't become mobile in CRPS. And this looks like a more, obviously soleus and gastrocnemius are very strong muscles, but they are a little far away from the bone. Whereas tibialis anterior and posterior are sort of literally hugging the bone. So maybe that's the reason why they are very important. What I'm telling you is what I have seen with the patients.
Yeah, I know. This is the practical part, no?
Yeah.
That,
See, it no. Only thing is the gastrocnemius and soleus, they insert into the tendoachilles, and it is only into the calcaneum. Whereas if you look at the tibialis anterior and posterior, they are coming to the tarsal bones, all the tarsal bones, in front as well as at the back. So probably they get a little better, levered action at the ankle, maybe.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Excellent talk, Rakhi.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I would have appreciated more if, enjoyed more if we would have actually got the dissection feel.
I know.
Everyone would have enjoyed over there.
Yeah. One more question. Someone else is away.
Another question from Dr. Rajesh Mahajan. For right side lumbothoracic pain, do we need to needle left side adductor muscles?
Yes, it's a straightforward answer. Definitely yes. You have to see, in any back problem, you have to needle both sides. The body is bilaterally symmetrical. The problems are also bilateral, usually. It is just that somehow when it comes to expression of pain, one side of the body seems to dominate more. It is as if the pain focuses on one side, but when you do needling, you realize that the other side is equally involved.
Yeah, ma'am, it's extensive, the anatomy and needling. My question is can you suppose not diagnose the muscles properly? Can you go wrong if you needle a wrong muscle by chance? I mean,
See, if there is no wrong muscle is a normal muscle.
Yeah.
So it becomes a painless needling. Okay, when you do the needling, if you find that most of your needles elicit no pain at all from the patient, all those are wrong muscles. But wherever you elicit pain, those are very, very important muscles, and you need to go more into that muscle. You are actually, in dry needling, you are actually being ghoulish. The patient says, you go and put 3 more needles there. The patient has no pain in one muscle, that's it. 1 or 2 needles and you are out. So that is the answer there.
all right, thank you.